Hello, everybody. So you probably just got done watching the video for the 4-patch kaleidoscope. So now we are going to start on our block of the month, month 1. So you can start on page 7, and it gives you the layout diagram of how the block should be set together. In your packet, you will have your background fabric and your L2, L3, M1, and D1 fabrics. So I'm going to show you about cutting the fabrics here. So we are going to start with our background fabric. So we're going to take our background fabric. I'm going to use the Stripology ruler. So I'm going to fold the 22.5-inch piece in half, and I'm going to use the Stripology ruler to cut this. You're going to cut multiple strips on the Stripology ruler if you hadn't used it, but the first strip that you're going to cut is a 7.25-inch wide strip with the fabric. With the fabric, just so that everybody remembers, just in case nobody knows, is from salvage to salvage. So I'm going to cut a 7.25 wide strip, is my first cut. And we got 7.25 here. So the next one is I need one strip that is 6.5 inches wide. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.5. And then I need two strips that are 3.5. And then the second one that's 3.5. So again, you're going to take your background fabric, you're going to cut that, you're going to make two strips that are 3.5 inches wide, one that's 6.5, and one that's 7.25. The 7.25 strip, we're going to open it up. I need 4 squares that are 7.25 wide. Again, I'm going to use the Stripology ruler here, and I'm going to cut my 4 pieces that are 7.25. These pieces will be what you use to make your flying geese. And here's my 4 7.25-inch squares. And then if you have any extra fabric, always save your extra fabric, just in case you have an oopsie. And a lot of your fabric in your strips will be used for future blocks. Now, we are going to take our 6.5-inch strip, and we are going to 4 rectangles that are 6.5 by 9.5. So I'm going to use the Stripology ruler again, line that up, and then 9.5. So if you haven't used the Stripology ruler for these rectangles, it is wonderful. So I have my 4 rectangles that are 9.5 by 6.5. I have my 4 squares that are 7.25 by 7.25. Now we're going to take my 3.5-inch strips. Now the 3.5-inch strips, do one strip at a time. Do not put them both together. We need to cut a strip that is, out of each one of these, we need a strip that is 3.5 by 24.5. Now, as you can see, what I'm doing here is this is my fold. So I'm measuring from the fold over, just in case you don't have a long enough ruler. I'm going to measure this using the Stripology ruler. So half of 24.5 is 12.25. So I'm measuring 12.25, cutting at 12.25. And then from this, we are going to cut 4 3.5-inch squares. So we're going to do that from each strip. So here's the one that is 24.5 by 3.5, and then now I have 4 squares that are 3.5 by 3.5. We're going to take the other strip, and I'll show you again. So I'm putting the fold over here, and I am going to use the Stripology ruler. From the fold, I'm not cutting on the fold, so make sure you don't cut that off. We are going to cut a strip that is 24.5, so if it's folded in half, we do 12.25, and then we're going to do 4 3.5-inch squares. So that is your background fabric. We've now cut the background fabric. We are going to take our pictured fabric, your L2, L3, M1, and D1. We're going to take these. Each one of these we are going to cut down to a 4-inch strip. And then you're going to cut rectangles off of it, but you got to make sure you save pieces to go into upcoming blocks. What I'm going to do is cut the 4-inch strip, and you're going to repeat the 4-inch strip on each 4 of those colors. So I'm just using the Stripology ruler here, and I'm going to cut a strip that's 4 inches wide. So there's my strip that's 4 inches wide. I'm going to open it up. I need a total of 4 of these. So I have it still folded in half, and I'm going to start from the salvage end. And now we're going to cut 3 1/8. So first I'm going to cut the salvage off. You guys are right-handed, so I'll show you how to do this right-handed. We're going to cut the salvage end off and get a raw edge. And now I'm going to cut off end that I just cut 3 7/8. So we're going to put our ruler here, and we're going to measure 3 7/8. There's 1. I'm going to turn this, and so now it's 3 7/8 by 4 inches. I need to cut it down to 3 7/8 by 3 7/8. So you're going to end up cutting 1/8 of an inch off the end. So there's 2 squares, and again, I'm going to come in here. I'm going to do 3 7/8, and I'm going to cut the 3 7/8. I'm going to turn this. And now it's 4 inches wide by 3 7/8. I'm going to make it 3 7/8 by 3 7/8. All right, so there is now my 4 squares from L2 that's 3 7/8. We are going to take the remainder of L2 and we are going to place this in block 4. So in the kaleidoscope patch, I had told everybody to label 12 bags month 1 through 12. All right, we're going to put this in month 4, and then this is for this month, and I'll show you again what we're going to do. I'll do one more, but you do this to all 4 of them. I'm going to cut a 4-inch strip, 4-inch wide strip on my fabric. So I have my salvage over here, so I'm going to start from the salvage end. We are going to cut off the salvage, so I get a nice straight edge. So this will be 4 inches wide, and we're going to cut the salvage off. So here's the edge that I just trimmed, and we're going to cut 3 7/8. So this will end up being 3 7/8 by 4. And now I'm going to cut 3 7/8 square off. I'm going to turn my block. We're going to trim it down to 3 7/8. So that I have 2 squares now that are 3 7/8 by 3 7/8. We need 2 more, and I'm going to cut 3 7/8 off. We need to trim that 4-inch side. So we're going to make this 3 7/8 square. I'm going to trim that. There's 3 7/8 square. So we have a total of 4. This is the L3. You're going to put L3 in month 7. You're then going to do the exact same thing to M1 and D1. 4-inch strips, 3 7/8 inch square, 4 of them off of each. M1, the remainder you're going to put in month 2, and D1, you're going to put it in month 4, and then that will be cut down, and then the remainder from that will go into month 6. That is how you're going to do your background squares. Now we're going to start. So we're going to grab our background piece that was 7 1/4 by 7 1/4. We're going to grab that piece. And then we're going to grab our 4 squares. I'm going to take the squares for each one, and we're going to draw a line down the center. You have multiple pins, sew-line pins. I have pink, white, gray. Depending on which fabric you're on and which one shows up. Generally, pink will show up really well. But if it doesn't, use one of your other ones. You can use the chalking pencil. So there's one with a line down it. You can use other ones. There's the air erase. Just make sure if you use an air erase that you can see it and you're going to sew them immediately. The water erasable one is a blue, so it's going to be very hard to see, so that's why I didn't even bother using that one. So now we have our 4 squares with the lines down the center. We're going to take our 7 1/4 inch background piece, and we're going to take 2 of the squares. I'm going to place this square on top of my background piece and line it up there. I'm going to take my second piece, make sure they are the same color. We don't want a different color in our flying geese because then it'll look funny. We're going to line this up. I didn't pin this because I found it kind of distorted it, so I used my Wender clips. So we're going to clip this, and I clipped them right here in the corners. If you get the little pack of 50s, that's handy. I probably have about 300 or 500 Wender clips total, and they all come in handy because they're all being used at the moment. All right, so I'm going to clip that. Now what I'm going to do is sew a 1/4 inch down each side. The instructions tell you to use a scant 1/4 inch. I did not use a scant 1/4 inch. So I'm going to bring the camera down. As you can see here, here's what my 1/4 inch foot will look like. They call for a scant 1/4 inch. So if you put your 1/4 inch foot and if you put it right next to the line, you will need to use your scant. And what they mean by scant, you move your needle to the right. If you have a Fopper Viking, just hit the plus sign once and move your needle just one notch over to the right. There's your scant. And that's if you have the line right to the right side of the foot. So if you could see there where the line's going to be on the right edge of the foot, I actually will sew with the foot right on the line, and then I don't have to do a scant. And that's what I did with all my pieces. I just sewed with that line the foot right on the line, right in the center of the line, as opposed to the side of it. So we're now going to sew a 1/4 inch down each side of your block. Now that we have sewn, you can see here where I have sewn down on each side of my drawn line. And so what you're going to do next is you're going to put your ruler on your drawn line, and you're going to cut right down your drawn line. And you can see where you're about a 1/4 inch away from the line. And I'm going to trim that. If you have your wonderful little wool pressing mat, love these things, we are going to take the iron and we're just going to press this up. Don't push really hard because you don't want to distort the fabric, but you're just going to press that up on both pieces. So you now have 2 pieces that look like this. Once you have those 2 pieces done, you're going to take that piece, and now I have another piece I do have a drawn line. We're going to line this piece up on there, and again, I'm going to draw a 1/4 inch to each side of my line. A helpful tip is when you start out, see where these 2 fabrics meet in the corners here? When you start here and you come down, and you're a 1/4 inch away, your needle should come off right where the 2 fabrics intersect, right here. And when you start with your needle down, you can start and you will have your needle start right here at the intersection where your 2 blue pieces will meet on there. And you're going to sew the 1/4 inch down each side. That 1/4 inch will now look like this. I am going to take my ruler and I'm going to line that up on my drawn line. I am going to trim this. So now I have 2 opposite pieces like that. I am going to press these. So we're going to take that, press that up, and then press this up. And you can see here where the top is lined up evenly, and there's my 2 flying geese pieces. So you're going to repeat that for background fabric that's 7 1/4 and your 3 7/8 inch squares. Next, we are going to go to the block layout. So I had started another square, so we're going to do the block layout. And if we look on page 8, here at the bottom left, you can see how the blocks are supposed to be laid out for your L2 is on the left, D1, M1. So I'm going to start laying out my pieces. So I have laid out my blocks here. This is where it's important to lay out. So you can see here my kaleidoscope 4 patches, and then I laid it out like the diagram shows you on page 8 at the bottom left. So what we're going to do is we have a hair at the top and at the very bottom. At the very bottom, those are the 6.5 by 9.5 inch rectangles. Kaleidoscope, 3.5 inch square, 3.5 inch square, 3.5, 9 1/4, 9.5, and 9.5. So you're going to lay all these out, and this is good to do to make sure you don't get your blocks turned. You're going to do this in columns. So this is going to be our first column here, second column, third, fourth, and fifth column. What you're going to do on the first column, you're going to sew this yellow piece to this flying geese. Then you're going to sew this flying geese to the kaleidoscope, like this. And then you're going to sew this piece to this one. And once you get those pieces sewn together, you're going to then sew this 9.5 by 6.5 to this piece to the bottom of the flying geese, and then your bottom 9.5 inch by 6.5 inch rectangle. You're going to sew those together, and it will come out, and you will get a piece that is solid like that. Then you're going to go to your second column. You're going to sew the 3.5 inch piece at the top to the flying geese, this flying geese to your bottom flying geese, and then your 3.5 inch square at the bottom. And you're going to get that column, which, when done, will look like this. And then you're going to sew your center column together, this piece to your kaleidoscope, and then the flying geese to the flying geese to get your center diamond, and then the kaleidoscope to your bottom flying geese. Now you can see where that's placed together, and so you can get a better look is that left column. You can see where this is broken apart in the left column. You're going to sew the 9.5 inch piece to this piece, the kaleidoscope this one to the bottom flying geese, and then your 9.5 by 6.5 inch rectangle to the bottom. You're going to complete that column, and then you're going to sew your columns together. I sewed the columns and then laid the columns back up here to make sure everything lines up and looks like it's supposed to. So when you get them together, you're supposed to be like this, and I'm going to kind of move the mat. Okay, so here's your top diamond. This one will be your D1. This will be your M1. This is going to be your L2, and then this is your L3. Once you get this together, you are going to take your 24.5 inch strip, and you're going to sew it to the end on the side, on both sides. So we're going to put this here, and we're going to sew this to this piece here, and then you're going to sew this piece to this side piece here. So now, once you get the side piece on, this is your finished block. Yay! All right, this is month 1, and you can see where your kaleidoscopes can look completely, totally different each time. So you're really going to enjoy the kaleidoscope whack and stack. All right, ladies, you have a wonderful evening.